Hello, my Aloha tribe. Good morning, good day, happy, whatever. Oh, that was a terrible start. That was a terrible start. Sorry, I had messages coming through on my phone. Anyways, hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of a whole lot of everything. Happy Tuesday. Today it is Veterans Day, and it's not just Veterans Day in the United States. It's Veterans Day amongst the Commonwealth, which is, I believe, the UK Commonwealth, I guess. So anyways, like Canada, Britain, and there are other places. So anyways, we are going to talk about Veterans Day today. But first, I'm going to preface that with thank you to all my immediate veterans. And by that, I mean my family, including my father, who served in the Army. Good morning, Muddy. And if any of you come on and you want to name who your veteran is, by all means, please do so. And if it's live, I'll thank them. And if it's not live, then, people will still know, right? And also, my friend Matthew and I were talking about this, and he comes from a very deep military family, as well as my friend Paula. Both of them are in the UK. So I would like to thank their veterans for their service as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, all my family members, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, I am surrounded by military, past, present, and probably one day future. So who knows? But anyways, I figured, normally I don't do a show on a holiday, but I thought, you know what? Let's talk about Veterans Day, right? Let's talk about Veterans Day. And I feel so strongly about this. I put it in my journal, not the little book, which is the Aloha Perspective book, but the journal. So, God, I love this journal. This journal's badass. I'm already getting sad because I know at some point I'm going to make my way all the way through it. And it's like, So anyways, here we go. Also, I would love to wish my cousin Jeannie a happy birthday. How's that, right? You're born and you get it's a holiday, right? So you always have your birthday off. How awesome is that? That would be pretty cool. I have to turn my birthday into a holiday. So anyways, Veterans Day. Let's do this. So, Sammy's granddad and most of his brothers served as well as her uncle, and she has cousins in the military now. So thank you. Thank them. I thank them all for their service. Again, past and present, and potentially future. But yeah, I have a lot of cousins in the military. Some are retired now. Some are still active. My cousin Leanne for sure is still active. She's the younger of the cousins, so all of us older cousins, the older cousins that were in the military are retired now. Yeah, so again, thank you everybody for your service to this country. I am patriotic to the core. All right. I don't care about these people that, go around acting, oh, this is my country. We're not going to make this political today, but I just want to preface that I bleed red, white, and blue. Even if I moved abroad, I still bleed red, white, and blue. I would not consider myself an expat if I lived out of the United States. I would just call myself rehomed. But because and of course, if I lived somewhere else, I would, respect that country and love that country too. But currently I'm in, America, and I love this country, and that's why I'm doing my best to try to save it from the hands of stupidity. So anyways, I promise that's all I'm going to say. So, all right. I'm going to read this. I found this online. I found it on Wikipedia, but I also looked it up on other news sources after, so it felt pretty accurate. And Wikipedia, for the most part, is pretty accurate. Sometimes you do have to go in there when it comes to other things, but for the most part, they're just kind of, because I think what happens is every so often you get these overzealous people that think they know what they're talking about, and then they try to edit it. And it's like, seriously, just stop. All right. But anyways, Veterans Day. On November 11th, 1919, President Woodrow Wilson issued a message to his countrymen on the first Armistice Day in which he expressed what he felt the day meant to Americans. So Armistice Day is what Remembrance Day and Veterans Day used to be called. So I believe Remembrance Day accompanied with the poppy is the Commonwealth. So like Canada and the UK, again, Britain, all the British Commonwealth. But I wish we had the poppy thing going. I know some people here have adopted it. I definitely know and understand what the poppy thing is in hockey, the National Hockey League, because so many of them are Canadian. The poppy thing does pop up from time to time, not just in the Canadian teams, but also on the American teams. So it is something that is not been adopted by this country, but definitely is a beautiful symbol of honoring our veterans in the month of November and all the time. Okay, let's not just some of the time, all the time. All right, these are people who've given their service to this country, whether you believe in the military or not. We all like peacetime. We all like peacetime. That's the goal, right? Is peacetime. So, but we still do have military. Every country has pretty much military. So, good morning, older sibling. So, here is the speech. A year ago today, our enemies laid down their arms in accordance with an armistice, which rendered them impotent to renew hostility and gave to the world an assured opportunity to reconstruct its shattered order and to work out in peace a new and more just set of international relations. The soldiers and people of the European allies had fought and endured for more than 4 years to uphold the barrier of civilization against the aggressions of armed force. We ourselves had been in the conflict something more than a year and a half. Out of this victory, there arose new possibilities of political freedom and economic concert. The war showed us the strength of great nations acting together for high purposes, and the victory of arms foretells the enduring conquest which can be made in peace when nations act justly and in furtherance of the common interests of men. I said I wasn't going to be political, but you can see my face right now. Anyways, to us in America, the reflections of armistice, I'm sorry guys, I think I have a minor lisp, so to us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the Council of Nations. So there you go. I'm sorry I tripped over that. But I did remove the second paragraph because the second paragraph, I know he was talking to Americans and how he thought that Americans felt, a year after the war ended. World War I, by the way, for those of you who missed history class. But it felt very self-serving. And if we were not in the climate in this nation right now that we were in, I probably would have kept it in. But it did feel very self-serving. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted there to be understanding that, when people came together, they were able to achieve peace. Now, the interesting thing is, even though they wanted to make Veterans Day or Armistice Day, it was noted on November 11th, 1919, it would actually take another 19 years for it to become for Congress to pass it. Congress is so slow. We're still waiting on daylight savings. But anyways, 19 years later, on May 13th, 1938, a congressional act made November 11th Armistice Day, which would later in America be called Veterans Day and, I believe in the Commonwealth, Remembrance Day. Here's the sad, not fun fact of this. The next time Veterans Day rolled around, which would have been November 11th, 1939, World War II had already begun. On September 1st, Hitler rolled into Poland. The British and the French said, you need to leave. This is not right. You're breaking the treaties. You're breaking all the stuff. And he said, I don't care. Screw you. I'm doing my own thing. Sounds familiar. And on September 3rd, the British and the French responded. And that's when World War II began. So, and it would not end, believe it or not. So this is interesting, okay, because I didn't know this. Hitler invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939. World War II started on September 3rd, 1939, and the end of the war was September 2nd, 1945. How wild is that, right? September 2nd, 1945. I mean, it's like 1, 2, 3, but not in order. So that's definitely out of step. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, and the reason I found this speech so important, is some of the words right here. You know, the war showed us the strength of great nations acting together for high purposes, and the victory in arms foretells the enduring conquests which can be made in peace, when nations act justly and in furtherance of the common interests of men. Well, common interests of humans. But, God, I'm really doing my best to not make this political. But it feels like in the climate that I live in now, everything that Woodrow Wilson said on that day just feels like it's been pushed aside. Someone in this administration, at the very top, actually called our military suckers and losers. He has not been doing anything to help them during this government shutdown. He even went to court and said, no. I said no, and it's going to stay no. To fund, SNAP, which is, which he thinks that only lazy people use. Dude, seriously. SNAP is used by people who even work because they fall below the poverty line. If you have ever tried to sign up for, food benefits, it is not an easy task. You are grilled. It's like you're basically sitting in one of those, rooms in the police station, and they are asking you everything. I mean, they ask you everything except for, I don't know. They ask you everything. They ask you for everything except your firstborn child. So, if you have one. But I mean, it is legit. It is legit. And it's not, and people who work use these. And apparently, I was reading some stats, right? And even veterans right now, some of them use it because they don't make enough. They don't make enough. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Because I said this is about Veterans Day. But veterans are very important to me. We have veterans that are homeless. We have veterans that are addicted. We have veterans who are not getting the help they need because there's no one out there advocating for them. Or that's a lie. I apologize, because there's a lot of people out there advocating for them. But there's people higher up that is doing nothing or doing nothing to support that. So everybody down below has to try to figure it out and has to try to do it and has to try to figure out where the money comes from. But these are our veterans. These are people who, even in peacetime, gave 4 years plus of their service. I mean, a minimum of 4 years for their, of their service to this country. And people will say, well, they didn't go to war. It doesn't matter. They don't have to. We have a military just to make sure. It's kind of like that, that little patch on things, right? And then if you need to use it, you just peel off the patch and poof, like the raft, right? You may not always need the emergency raft, but it's there. When you go on a cruise, you may not always need the lifeboats, but they're there just in case. Or just in case. But here's the thing, they don't just sit around and do nothing. When other countries are having problems, they send medical aid. They send people to help. They send people to go and be there for other people. They have liaisons. They don't just sit around and twiddle their thumbs. Okay, they roam the world. Well, that's a Navy, but, they're just there. Oh, the other person. Thank you to my friend Amy's husband, who is also, currently serving in the military. So in England, I know. So, wow. I am going to get a little soapboxy though on this. Not about politics, I promise. I'll stay away from that. I'll try, okay? I may break that promise, but I will try to stay away from that. I see 3 people on, so if it's Jeannie, happy birthday again. So, but anyways, that last part, and here it is too. To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day or Veterans Day will be filled with solemn pride. Oh, hi, Catherine. will be filled in solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service, and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing which it has faced, or forced us, or freed us. Sorry, my writing. Which it has freed us, and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the Council of Nations. We're missing that right now. But like I said, I'm not going to be political because they just make me angry right now. I've never seen a greater disregard of the Constitution than I have since the beginning of January, or the middle of January. But anyways, like I said, with our military, not all of them may see, war. And I'm grateful for that. That's how life should be. But as you know, we all have militaries. And like I said, when they're not doing other things, they're out there helping other countries with things. They're helping other countries organizing. They're organized. They're helping other countries build. They're helping other countries with medical aid. They're helping feed other countries. This is all important because that's what we do. Some people don't feel like that is necessary, but that's what we do. We help other people so that in our time of need, they will be there for us. But we don't help them in the hopes of, of getting something back. We help them because it's the right thing to do. That's how we were raised. To not expect something in return, but to just be there for people. Be humans. Just be humans. And we need to start taking care of our veterans. One of the problems I have is Vietnam veterans and how they're treated. And I think it's gotten a lot better now. But I remember, my father telling me stories about when he came back. And or even people he knew coming back, or just our veterans coming back in general. I mean, this is a war where people were drafted. Okay, and maybe, it was an unpopular war. And maybe we shouldn't have been there. And there's all the ifs, ands, buts, could be's, there's, here, there's, right? But the point is these men and women dedicated their lives, at least, again, for a minimum of 2 to 4 years, to go be somewhere. And not only that, some people volunteered. My dad joined the Army. He wasn't drafted. But that was more just, I'm not even sure he knew the war was going on at the time that he, but, poof, he found out fast, right? I think he had 3 tours of Vietnam, but he was the supply guy. So, thank goodness, because, it would scare me. I did meet another person who was a Marine who was in country, and wow, he had some stories to tell. But can you imagine coming back? Because even if you could not see the scars, if the scars weren't physical, maybe they were completely intact from head to toe, that doesn't mean this was. They saw a lot of crap out there that none of us will ever have to face in our lifetime, except when we watch TV. And even that is probably not fully accurate unless you watch, like documentaries. Dad and I watched a really good documentary this year. And the propaganda that was happening too. Like there is one where they show a general shooting a man in the streets, right? And everyone's like, oh, this war is so horrible and blah, 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 blah. Well, here's the thing. They actually interviewed the son of the friends of the man who shot that man in the street. Now, I'm not saying it was right, but he was angry. But I'll give you the backstory for that. That picture became very famous because the journalist did not know the story behind that. And that man that he shot had just murdered an entire family. But he missed the son. The son had hidden. The mom told him to run when he could. When he came back, his entire family was murdered. He was able to come to America to stay with family, grew up, I think he was an engineer. But none of us knew the story. I didn't know the story. I was like, oh my God, seriously? Yeah. But they propagandized that picture. So, Oh yeah. So I'm going to share a fun story. Let's go a little light. Um, Older sibling and I were at Disneyland, and this man and his wife were sitting under the tree near the train station, and probably just relaxing. And she was wearing one of her tie dye shirts. I think it was her peace shirt, but I always want to say it was the Nova Scotia shirt. But she said no, it wasn't. She said it was just her peace shirt. But older sibling grew up a flower child, hardcore, kind of flower child slash hippie, right? She hippies when she wants to, but mostly she's all about peace and love. But she was wearing her tie dye shirt, and she had a friend whose father was a POW. So she was not one of she protested the war, but she was not one of the people being assholes to the soldiers returning home. And she loves her tie-dyes. She loves her colorful shirts. She loves her cat shirts. I love her for it. But she walks up to this gentleman sitting under the tree, and boy, he's fine. He's just kind of like, I think he was just waiting to see what she was going to say. Now, this is only a couple years ago. I mean, it was probably like the late 20 teens, right? And the wife starts to bristle. She's just kind of like, which I love, because she was protecting him, because she obviously had been through all this stuff with him. But the first thing that comes out of this woman's mouth is, what do you want? And it's like, wow, talk about triggers and PTSD. So of course, I know why siblings going over there. And I'm just sitting there like, now I'm bristling because we're both protecting our people. I mean, this is my older sibling. And Laura just reaches out her hand and she's like, I just wanted to thank your husband for his service. And she's like, oh, because the man was like, let her talk. And she's like, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your service. And I believe they had a tiny conversation. But, and of course, the lady and I unbristled. But, it's kind of one of those also, don't judge a book by its cover. Just because someone wears tie-dye doesn't mean that they don't have, love and respect. Okay? I'm not sure older sibling has any immediate family that was in the military, but she knows all of my family. She knows my dad. But and we do. She has taught me, because I can be very shy when it comes to stuff like this. I can be very, very shy, but she is, I do try to go out of my way to, if someone's wearing a veteran's hat, but especially a Vietnam veteran's hat, to thank them for their service, just because they didn't get that when they came back. And a lot of the men who are out there, men and women who are addicted or who are homeless and living on the streets, who didn't get the mental health care they needed because, for whatever reason, maybe we got to help them. We don't have to save them, but we have to help them. We can't save anybody. Only people can save themselves. But I read a book, the body keeps the score. And God, you know what? I can never remember this man's name, but Sammy found it for me the last time. But one of his first test studies, because he's kind of the person that gave PTSD a name. Okay, it had existed before, obviously, because we had previous world wars going all the way, and we had wars going all the way back to like what? The Civil War, Revolutionary War, Spanish American War, all these different things, right? Back in between the 18th and 20th centuries. But he started noting all these things, like all these men who were coming back from Vietnam and they were just struggling. But he also noticed that when he put them in a group together, they all seemed to change. Whether it was World War II veterans with the Vietnam veterans, and of course they probably had a sprinkle of, World War I veterans, because this is back in the 70s. And, he noticed something. They only talked about their military service. They didn't talk about anything else. And he realized, Bessel van der Kolk, thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Muddy. I appreciate it. Oh, my goodness. How do we not remember that? It's like a cool name, Bessel van der Kolk. But anyways, I gotta write that down. I have the book, right? But I gotta write that down. But anyways, Bessel van der Kolk. So anyway, but he noticed that that's all they would talk about. And when he would try to change the subject, somehow they'd circle back. But that's where their memories were tied to. And then I think after a while, he started understanding what triggers were. And there are triggers, right? I mean, you have a person who's used to hearing bombs going off in the background, and then a car backfires outside your house and you're just like, you're dropping to the floor and hiding behind the bed. because that was natural when you heard that sound. You just drop and cover. And so, I think one of the reasons, this is only my opinion now, I'm just going to share my humble opinion on this. I think one of the reasons why, mental health never gets checked when military comes home, maybe more so now, because, there's even commercials now where there's a Navy SEAL guy out there and he's talking about, please, you know what, even if they don't want your help, be the person they hate because you're getting them help. But I like that he's a Navy SEAL because everyone's like, oh, they're super tough. They don't need, no, everybody needs it. Some people are able to compartmentalize. Some people are not. Some people are able to deal with it in the moment and say, hey, you know what? This is what I signed up for. Okay. But other people can't. And other people may have an underlying mental health condition. And the trauma, prolonged exposure to war actually falls under a newer term called complex PTSD, so CPTSD, which they also attribute to long-term trauma, physical abuse, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, all those things, mental abuse, just long-term abuse. They all fall under the same. PTSD now is being known more a little bit for like these in the moment things that happen, maybe a car accident, maybe a fight, maybe, something that is, not, I don't want to say not traumatic, but shorter in time of the trauma. So like either instant, done, or just a shorter amount of time that it's happened, not prolonged. So complex PTSD is kind of a prolonged thing. And I feel a lot of our veterans, fall under this, but they don't get help because what is one of the first things they're trained to do? They're trained to react. They're trained to, back in the Vietnam days, they're trained to kill, back in World War II, trained to kill because you're going into war. They're training you for war. They're not training you for, peacetime. They're training you for war. And I think when they come back, we forget all this. But then I think a lot of times too, they don't want to get help. They don't want to seek out the groups that might be able to help them or seek out the therapy that might want to help them because they're trained to, be tough. They're trained to be like just walking armor that nothing can touch, but it does. Even metal rusts. And why does metal rust? Because it's exposed, right? To moisture. It's exposed to water. And this is what happens. We may be walking, armor, but things still can sink in. And when it does, it gets into here. And a lot of these people, period, across the board, who may be addicted, they're trying to leave their trauma behind. They don't want to think about it anymore. And that's not always the case. Some people just, get addicted. I have a very addictive personality, so I have to watch the things that I do. And as you can tell from food is my addiction. But I do have to watch the things I do. And, if I'm binging or something, or if I'm feeding all my cravings, I have to reel it in. But I have gotten to the point where I understand how to do that because of therapy. And that's why we need to help our veterans. We need to figure out how to get them off the street. We have to figure out how to give them a safe space so they can heal. There was a great Criminal Minds episode. It was kind of an arc between Joe Montana and, oh my gosh, I can't think of his name. I can see his face. But they were actually best friends in real life. But his friend, who was his commander in Vietnam, was on the streets. But then, he started talking to him. He said, look, you know what? You need to heal this. There was something he needed to heal. He healed it, got help. And then there was something else he needed to heal, got that taken care of. But then unfortunately, in real life, he passed away. I promise, I will put the name in the comments because I can see his face in my head. He was on Designing Women. But, Meshach Taylor. That's it. Thank you. I knew if I said that, I would see the credits in my head. So anyway, it was an arc. It was just an arc. But I like that they pointed that out. Because how many of our vets are on the street? How many of our vets had to keep secrets? How many of our vets, just didn't have someone they could talk to because, they didn't know how to? Because a lot of our Vietnam veterans also come from the era of, you don't have depression, just be stronger. We don't talk about mental health. We sweep it under the rug. You know, we do not. And because of that and their military training, they don't get the help they need. Now, I'm not saying everybody that comes back from these things needs it. You know, some people are able to just deal with things in the moment. But there are those others that cannot. And that was the biggest message I wanted to make during, you know, this Veterans Day edition of the Aloha Perspective. Because we shouldn't forget our veterans. We should honor them. You know, even if you were a hippie in the 60s, if you see a Vietnam veteran, just thank them for their service, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they saw. You don't know what they may have had to do in their lives just to survive there. And remember, you can't judge a book by its cover, because a lot of these people were drafted, or they just chose to join because they were afraid they would be drafted, and they wanted to make sure that, you know, they got the best training to stay alive. And it affects them. I'm going to share one last story. It was my ex-boyfriend, or not my ex-boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend, his stepfather. His stepfather was in Vietnam, wouldn't talk to anybody about it, not his wife, not my boyfriend, not his own kids, nobody. I mean, I'm sure he had buddies that he chatted with, but I remember one day I was just, you know, I mean, I'd already gotten to know them, so, you know, kind of like free reign of the house, right? And Bill had an office downstairs, so I was just in there, and I found this dagger hanging on the wall, very rusted, very old, and I was just looking at it, and I was just kind of like, you know, and then I was just, you know, I got it. Older sibling knows I got to touch everything, so I went to touch it, and as I was doing that, Bill's all, "Oh, do you want to know the story on that?" Or he's all, "Yeah," or "I got that in Vietnam." That's what he said. And I said, "Oh," and I had no idea. I had no idea he was in Vietnam. So I'm like, "Oh, you were in Vietnam?" And he's all, "Yeah." And he kind of says it hesitantly, right? Like I'm going to say something. I said, "My dad was in Vietnam." He's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And I'm all, and he's all, "Yeah." He's all, "I was in the Marines and I had platoons and yada, yada, yada." And I said, "Oh," I'm all, "Well, my dad was, you know, was in camp." I said, "He was the supply guy." And he's like, "No." He's all, "Anybody that was there, we were all brothers and sisters." He's all, "It doesn't matter." He's all, "Everybody was a team there." And he started talking to me about this dagger. And this dagger was, they were ambushed. And it was kind of like shooting into the trees, right? And then all of a sudden, everything was done. They were in. He had taken it off of a boy. He said the kid couldn't have been older than 13 or 14. But he's all, "I kept it to remind," he's all, "some people keep things as trophies." He's all, "I kept it as a reminder to me to always be a good person. And to keep living, because there was a lot of people that didn't." He lost his own platoons there. But he didn't keep it as a trophy. He kept it as a reminder. You know, a reminder of what, you know, he didn't want to go through anymore. And when we both came out, so he started talking to me, we probably stood there for about half an hour, and he was just telling me all these different things. When we came out, you know, he left the room, and I was walking out behind him, and all of a sudden I got kind of ambushed by his kids and my boyfriend, and they're like, "What did he say?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not sure that I'm at liberty to say now, since he hasn't said anything to you guys," but they're all, "He has never talked to anybody about that. Ever." And then he met my dad. I threw my boyfriend a surprise party at the time, my ex-boyfriend. And he and my dad, they talked. They like just bonded. And I think that was something good for them. That's something they needed. A lot of guilt happens. A lot of shame happens. And we need to be better to our veterans. Some of them, you know, if you ever saw that movie with Bradley Cooper, they don't get the help they need, and they go rogue, you know, and then they kill people. Or, so this is why, you know, the PTSD and stuff. And, you know, sometimes the triggers can be so strong that they forget where they're at. They just have mental snaps and mental breaks. And there may be people out there watching this going, "Yeah, no." And I mean, years later, if it goes unchecked, it festers. And it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So we need to be better as humans. We need to take care of our veterans. We need to take care of all of our people, really. But since it's Veterans Day, we're going to zero in on the veterans. But we need to focus in on our veterans. We need to take care of them. We need to make sure that they are okay. And we need to get them off the streets and into places that can help them. There are service centers. There are centers that will help people. I know in LA, I believe they're building a couple for veterans. They're also building a few for homeless people, but that doesn't mean it's going to be an easy journey. But when people show consistently that they care, even when the triggers come up, even when the PTSD comes up, and that there's still people by their side, it can help. So, again, let us not forget our veterans and to thank them for their service. Older siblings, still one of my best favorite stories ever. I will share this. I'm not going to share the whole thing because I'm not here to, this isn't about me. This is about our veterans. But there was a day when sibling and I went to Disneyland just because they do a veteran ceremony at the flag at the front. And so, I ran into a veteran and we exchanged some niceties. He was in Vietnam, and I thanked him for his service, and I thanked a few people for their service that day, but I'll leave it at that. But what was interesting is that night I got a text or a IM message on Facebook, and it's like, Shelly, were you at Disneyland today? And it's like, yeah. And it turns out the very person I had stopped, the Vietnam veteran I found to stop to thank for his service, just happened to be the uncle of one of my friends. And he's all like, her name sounded really familiar, so I looked her up on your friend thing, and I saw it. It's like, oh, that's the girl. So, Shelly Marie. It's not a common name. So yeah, that was one of my favorite memories, but also bristling to protect older sibling. Like, all right, lady, let's throw down. I'll take you out while we thank your husband for his service. But also, if the wife is there, I ran into a man in Walmart a couple weeks ago because I had to go get some stuff for my dad, and he was a Vietnam veteran, and I thanked him for his service, and then I thanked his wife. Don't forget to thank the wives. Okay, because the families have to do a lot when they're in service, especially when they were in Vietnam, right? I mean, they're sitting right hoping that they don't get that guy driving up or, that letter in the mail going, So, there's a lot that happens there too, and even I think, she definitely deserves thanks because she held it all down. So, don't forget to thank the families. Whether it's peacetime, wartime, whatever, because the families do have to make sacrifices as well. So again, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all for coming on. Sammy, older sibling, Catherine, I think you're gone now, but, thank you for hanging in there. Thank a veteran today. If there's anything you can do today, thank a veteran, even if it's on Facebook, even if it's on social media, drop thank yous. All right. Because they do sacrifice a lot, peacetime, wartime, whichever time, they are giving up their time and their lives. So, again, thank you. And I just want to say one last thing. Sammy, thank you for my bookmark. It's the TARDIS. It's a skinny TARDIS, but it's the TARDIS and I love it. This girl, she's all like, I was hoping you'd love it. It's like, hello, it's Doctor Who. It's like my favorite TV show. So again, have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Self-Care Wednesday. Yay! It'll be much lighter. So again, thank you again, and I will see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. Anybody can watch on Facebook under Shelly Marie Lucas. All lives are public again, and you can find me across the social media board. All right. So again, thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Muddy, older sibling, Catherine, for all popping on, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.